All right, diving in today. We're tackling a book a lot of you have been asking about, Nir Eyal's Indistractable. Seriously, this one has changed the way I think about, well, pretty much everything.
Yeah, it's one of those books that just hits you right where you live, especially in our always-on world.
I mean, I used to beat myself up about being so glued to my phone. But Eyal's whole take on distraction, it's not just about tech.
Ah, he flips the script completely. It's like we're so quick to blame our devices, but the real culprit is often hiding inside us.
Internal triggers, right. That was a huge moment for me.
Exactly. He talks about those uncomfortable feelings we try to escape: boredom, stress, loneliness. It's like we're constantly trying to scratch an itch, and our phones are the easiest scratch.
That is such a good analogy. Like, I get it, the phone's not evil. It's just the go-to solution for dealing with all that inner stuff. So
Yeah.
where do we even start?
Well, the first step is just noticing those triggers. Eyal suggests this idea of a distraction journal. It sounds kind of nerdy, but it's actually pretty simple.
Okay, so like, jot down when you feel that pull to get distracted, what's going on in your head and maybe what triggered it.
Yep, exactly. You'd be surprised how much just being aware of those patterns can help.
Okay, that makes sense. Awareness is always the first step.
Hmm.
But then what? How do we actually deal with those triggers?
Eyal talks about reframing those internal triggers. Like, instead of getting sucked in, you pause and really examine what's going on inside.
Okay, so we're not just mindlessly reacting, we're actually getting curious about those feelings. But what about when it's like intense boredom? Sometimes that urge to check my phone feels almost impossible to resist.
Right, I get that. For those moments, Eyal talks about gamifying tasks. Like, if you're dreading doing the dishes, try setting a timer and seeing if you can beat your best time.
Huh, I actually do that. Kind of competitive with myself, I guess.
There you go. It's about finding ways to make those mundane things a bit more engaging.
I like that. And I think it ties into something else Eyal talks about, right? Being kind to ourselves when we slip up.
Absolutely. Self-compassion is huge. We tend to get so down on ourselves when we get distracted, but that just makes us feel worse.
Oh, for sure. The negative self-talk spiral.
So instead of beating yourself up, try shifting the language. Instead of, ugh, I'm so bad at this, try, okay, I'm learning and I'll try again next time.
Okay, yeah, that feels a lot more supportive. So much of this is about mindset, isn't it?
It really is. But let's be real, it's not all about what's going on in our heads. We're also bombarded by a ton of external
Oh,
distractions.
yeah, constantly. Like, our world is practically designed to grab our attention every second, right?
Exactly. And that's where Eliel's concept of hacking back external triggers comes in. It's about taking control of our environment instead of letting it control us.
Okay, hacking back. I like the sound of that. Give me the details.
He uses this analogy of pilots and their sterile cockpit role. During takeoff and landing, there's no chit-chat allowed, right? It's all about focus and safety.
Ah, so we need to create our own sterile cockpit moments in our lives.
Exactly. It's about signaling to others when you need uninterrupted focus time. And Eyal has tons of practical tips for doing this.
Okay, lay 'em on me. My inbox alone feels like a constant distraction black hole.
Well, one of my favorites is his email strategy. He keeps only two folders, one for immediate replies and one for everything else.
Wait, so he's only checking his inbox like once a week? I'm not sure my boss would be on board with that.
Huh. It might not work for everyone, but the principle is key. It's about batching your responses instead of getting sucked into that constant back and forth.
Right, so it's all about being more intentional with how we manage our time and attention.
Exactly. And that brings us to another one of Eyal's key concepts: time boxing.
Time boxing, huh? So like scheduling out every minute of our day.
It doesn't have to be that rigid. It's more about creating a framework for your week that actually aligns with your values and goals.
Okay, so instead of just reacting to whatever pops up, you're proactively deciding how you want to spend your time.
Exactly. And here's the really interesting part. Eyal says you should actually start by scheduling time for yourself first.
Wait, seriously? That almost feels selfish, doesn't it?
Not at all. It's about recognizing that self-care is the foundation for everything else. If you're burnt out and exhausted, you can't show up fully for your work or your relationships.
Okay, that makes sense. So time for that yoga class, that morning walk, that creative project I've been putting off. It all goes on the calendar.
Absolutely. And Eyal's a big believer in scheduling time for relationships too. Date nights, coffee with friends, family dinners. It's about making those connections a priority.
This is blowing my mind a little bit. Like, I think we often feel guilty about taking time for ourselves or our loved ones. But Eyal is saying it's actually essential for being truly productive and, happy.
It's about creating a life that feels intentional and aligned with what actually matters to you. And, this whole idea of being intentional with our time, it's not just about our personal lives, right? It's
Mhm.
about creating a work culture that actually supports focus.
Oh, yeah, because even if we're like personally rocking the whole indistractable thing, a chaotic workplace can totally throw us off track.
Exactly. IL's not about placing all the blame on individuals. He's like, hey, even the most dedicated person can get sabotaged by a dysfunctional work culture.
Yeah, it's not just about me trying harder. It's about the company creating systems and expectations that actually support focus. That's a pretty radical idea, honestly.
It is. He dives into some of the common culprits, work bleeding into personal time, that pressure to be constantly on, even the lack of psychological safety for employees to speak up about their concerns.
Ugh, the always-on pressure. I've definitely felt it. Like, I have to answer emails at all hours, even on vacation. It's exhausting.
Eyal's a big advocate for setting clear boundaries and having open communication. He actually brings up a pretty surprising example, Slack.
Wait, Slack, isn't that like the king of constant communication?
You'd think so, right? But Eyal points out that Slack actually has some great internal practices. They have these dedicated feedback channels where employees can voice concerns without fear of, getting in trouble.
So even tech companies can create a culture that respects focus. That's encouraging.
Definitely. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that really hit home for me raising indistractable kids.
Oh yeah, the screen time dilemma. Feels like every parent I know is wrestling with that one.
It's a hot topic for sure. But Eel takes a different approach. Instead of just demonizing screens, he looks at why kids are turning to tech in the first place.
Okay, so it's not just that screens are inherently bad. There's something deeper going on.
He talks about research showing that kids often turn to tech when their basic psychological needs aren't being met in the real world.
So it's like they're trying to fill a void, but what are those needs exactly?
Eel breaks it down into three things: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Kids need to feel in control of their lives, capable of doing things, and connected to others.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, thinking back to my own childhood, I definitely turned to books and TV when I was feeling lonely or bored.
Exactly. And if those needs aren't being met offline, kids are going to find a way to get them met online.
So instead of just focusing on restricting screen time, we need to create environments where kids can actually thrive offline. But what does that look like in practice?
IOL has some great tips. He talks about the importance of unstructured playtime, giving kids agency in decision making, and being mindful of our own tech habits as parents.
So less scheduled activities, more time for free play and exploration. I like that.
And instead of just saying no screens, try involving your kids in setting those limits and choosing alternative activities they actually enjoy.
That's a good idea. It gives them a sense of ownership. And modeling good tech habits ourselves, that's huge, right? Kids are always watching.
Always. Okay, we've covered a lot, from those internal triggers to hacking back those external distractions to even raising indistractable kids. It's like a whole new framework for thinking about focus.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it feels so much more empowering than just feeling like a victim of, our constantly connected world. So we're getting better at managing those internal triggers. We're hacking back those external distractions. But let's be real. Sometimes willpower just isn't enough. Is there anything else we can do to like really stay on track?
Well, that's where AL's concept of PACS comes in. It's this idea of making pre-commitments to help us stay focused on what really matters.
Backs. Okay, that sounds kind of intense. Tell me more.
So there are a few different types of pacts. There's the effort pact. Basically, you make the unwanted behavior harder to do, kind of like putting those tempting snacks way up high in the pantry, so you have to really work for it.
Out of sight, out of mind. So in the distraction world, an effort pact could be like using an app to block social media during work hours.
Exactly. Or even just finding a study buddy to keep you accountable. Having that external support can be a game changer.
Yeah, accountability is huge. What other kinds of pacts does Ale talk about?
Well, there are also price packs. This is where you literally put some skin in the game. Adel actually shares this crazy story in the book. He made a pact with himself to burn a $100 bill every time he missed a workout.
Whoa, he was willing to set money on fire. That's dedication. Did he ever actually have to, you know, light that bill?
Thankfully, no. But just the thought of it was enough to keep him motivated. It raised the stakes.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that would make those consequences a lot more real. You said there was one more type of pact.
The last one is the identity pact. It's all about shifting your self-image. Instead of saying, I'm trying to be less distracted. You say, I am an indistractable person.
Ooh, I like that. It's subtle, but it's powerful, right? You're not just trying to change your behavior. You're changing your identity.
Exactly. It's about aligning your actions with who you want to be.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive. We've covered so much. Internal triggers, time boxing, hacking back those external distractions, packs. It's like a whole new way of thinking about focus.
And the best part is that Eyal doesn't just talk about the theory, right? He gives you all these practical, actionable things you can start doing today.
It really is empowering. It's like we're not just helpless victims of this crazy tech-filled world. We actually have more control than we think.
Couldn't agree more. And remember, becoming indistractable, it's a journey, not a destination. There will be days when we slip up, and that's okay.
Exactly. Progress, not perfection.
Right, exactly. And even those small changes, they can make a huge difference over time.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one final thought you'd leave our listeners with?
You know, I'd challenge everyone listening to think about just one small step they can take today to create more traction in their lives. What's one action that pulls you toward those things you really value? Maybe it's setting aside 30 minutes for focused work, scheduling a coffee date with a friend, or putting your phone in another room during dinner. Small changes, big impact.
Love that. And for anyone who wants to dive even deeper into these ideas, we highly recommend checking out Indistractable by Nir Eyal. Seriously, it's a game changer. And don't forget to let us know about your own indistractable wins. We love hearing from you.
Until next time, stay curious and keep diving deep.
And most importantly, stay indistractable.